Really, baby, I go above my head. I just can't get enough. I just can't get enough. How your fingertips me and everything you say. I just can't get enough. I just can't get enough. These things like me to fall in love, and I just can't seem to get enough.
Hot Christmas films for cold winter nights on BBC2. Starting with LA Confidential tomorrow at 9.
It's business as usual down on Jimmy's farm.
Complete chaos. Can't be any worse, surely.
He still loves his pigs.
Poor old Blaze.
He still loves his lady.
Still quite romantic.
But can he get his pigs to love his lady pigs?
We really should be going on a rocket. I don't think Blaze is gay.
Catch up with everyone's favourite farmer. Back on Jimmy's farm. Thursday at 9 on BBC2.
Pretty hard to buy a present for me. A used soap on the rope, short of a facelift.
I think it was a bottom bra once. A set of differently sized nail clips.
Have you got the receipt?
Get what you really want this Christmas. Grumpy Old Women, Tuesday at 9 on BBC2.
Now on BBC2, we hand over to BBC News 24.
Some of these luxurious properties are in demand almost all year round. But during the peak season, some of these villas can go up to $20,000 per night.
Every house that we rent comes fully staffed, and that means that you can get from a cook and a maid to a laundress to a butler to a chauffeur to anything that you want, and some of them come with as many as 8 or 10 staff in a house.
But if renting isn't your style, how about owning a property at this exclusive Sugar Hill estate? This sea view property is just around the corner from the singer Sir Cliff Richard's villa. It has 7 ensuite bedrooms, a swim-up bar, dining gazebo, sauna and almost 2 acres of garden, and all for the price of $7.5 million.
In Barbados, what you pay for when you pay those higher prices, you're paying for beach location. And there are maybe 3 or 4 beach locations along the west coast that stand out as being the prime places to live. So if there's a house available on a beach in a particular area, let's say Sandy Lane or Gibbs Beach or what I call Cobbler's Cove Beach, those are the houses that people will say, wow, we want that. So then it becomes, how much will anyone pay for that house? So it doesn't relate necessarily to the bricks and mortar and the size or anything. It's that sort of like a diamond. It's the quality of the diamond in terms of location.
But while the island has made itself famous for attracting the well-known, it also realizes that it is the large number of regular tourists who really fuel its economy. The challenge for the island now is to maintain its high-end image without appearing so selective that it deters potential new visitors. Ah, how the other half live. Anyway, still to come here on Fast Track. We find out what's been done to protect one of the most endangered species here in the Caribbean, and we travel to Brazil to find out what they're doing to preserve one of the oldest forms of martial arts. That's all still to come here on the programme. These white sandy Barbadian beaches are occupied by thousands of tourists every year, but they're also home to another type of visitor, an endangered one. So endangered, in fact, that a special project has been set up to preserve them. Inga Lovridge-Kemp takes up the story of the rare hawksbill turtle.
These Caribbean waters have been home to different species of turtles for thousands of years, but now they're endangered. There's a real risk that the turtles could be extinct in the near future. hawksbill turtles grow up and live on and around the reefs of the Caribbean Sea. For centuries, humans have hunted them for their shells, eggs, and their meat. But there is a new and growing threat that these turtles are now having to contend with. People love beaches, so do turtles. The more humans there are on the beach, the less room there is for turtles to lay their eggs and nest. Sometimes there is so little room that turtles are forced to lay their eggs in places below the tide line, which often leads to entire clutches being simply washed away.
We know on a national scale that they are severely depleted because, fishermen have memories of turtles being far more abundant than they are today. And in fact, if you go back even further than that, 200 or 300 years ago, to the time when the Europeans came to the Caribbean, sea turtle populations were huge, far larger than they are today.
Luckily for these turtles at least, help is at hand, namely the Barbados Sea Turtle Project, which is run by the University of the West Indies and monitors sea turtle population.
The reason we can tell that this is a hatched-out nest is that the layer of sand is lower than the surrounding beach surface. And so we know that a clutch of hatchlings have actually made their way out of their shells and up through the sand and out onto the beach and gone off into the sea.
Drillhole Beach has the highest nesting density on the island. Almost a quarter of nesting turtles will come here to lay their eggs between June and September each year.
So if we dig down into this nest now, we should hopefully encounter eggshells and hopefully not too many hatchlings that didn't make it.
And during that time, students and volunteers will patrol these beaches on the lookout for turtles in trouble.
Time was drifting, this rock's got to roll, so I hit the road and made my getaway.
Barry Kruger has been running the underwater aspect of the Barbados Sea Turtle Project for the last 7 years. 3 times a week he takes volunteers and tourists down below to monitor the movements of hawksbill turtles on the reefs of Barbados.
If the survival of these turtles could be guaranteed, they could become a major tourist attraction and boost the local economies, because these waters are one of the very few places in the world where tourists can see turtles in their natural habitat.
In these waters, Barry and other volunteers catch turtles to observe their activities and their growth rates before releasing them back to the water. So far, 708 sea turtles have been made a record of, and today it's the 709th. Every captured turtle is given an identifying number so that their weight, length and subsequent growth can be recorded over the coming years. And because some of the turtles tend to swim far away from these waters, their movements can now be tracked by satellite as they swim around the other Caribbean islands. In addition to its tank, there is something else that the turtles get before being released back into the water and freedom: a name. Who knows how far the newly named Inga will swim or what adventure she'll encounter on her travels. But everyone involved in the Barbados Sea Turtle Project hopes that her new identity and tracking device will help humans understand more about her world. And that this collaboration between conservation bodies, volunteers and tourists can continue to be a powerful example of how man and nature can coexist, and at the same time help save one of the world's rarest marine creatures.
Inga Loveridge kept there exploring the world of the hawksbill turtles. But did you know there's another underwater habitat that you can discover on this island, but you don't even have to get wet to see it?
Okay, once more, welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Inner Space. This reef is what Barbados would have looked like many, many thousands of years ago. Our island was once a coral reef. Just like what you're viewing here, it was pushed to the surface due to the movement of the Earth's crust. Caribbean plate pushing against the Atlantic plate, and Barbados was formed. We have abundance of fish here, fish life here. Got lots of Creole wrasse. Those are the chubby bluefish. They swim in their side fins or pectoral fins. Look as though they're flying. Those are the Creole wrasse. The hawksbill turtle. You don't usually get to see the turtles very often. Turtles are unfortunately on the endangered species list. They have a very low survival rate, maybe 1 in 1,000 eggs laid. Now turtles can stay down below for about 4 to 5 hours on one breath of air. So it's important to note that the female turtle, she always returns to the beach on which she was hatched, no matter where she swims in life. There's a shipwreck here coming up on our port side. This ship used to ferry fresh water out to the cruise ships or any cargo vessels that docked off our island. It's been sitting here, ladies and gentlemen, for approximately 40 odd years. It's about 70 feet long and 25 feet across. It is one of over 200 documented wrecks that we have on the island. This is just 40 odd years of coral growth, so you can still notice the shape, the formation of the actual ship. Maybe in another 1,000 years or so, this wreck could be unrecognizable. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we are being called to the surface, so take your last photographs, the last glimpse of the underwater world.
The beautiful underwater world there of the Caribbean. Now to somewhere a little bit different. Brazil is a destination known for its musical rhythm, and it's also home to a unique form of dance. In Portuguese, it's called capoeira, a dynamic mix of martial arts and dance. In fact, it's so unique that the Brazilian government have launched an official campaign to preserve it. Carmen Roberts now reports from the Brazilian city of Salvador.
Capoeira is a word with no translation. A dance of rare physical beauty, yet sometimes violent and fast. Some say it's the highest choreographic expression of a suffering race. It began as a dangerous game created by African slaves in Brazil to fight their masters.
In the 1920s, capoeira was prohibited here on the streets of Brazil. Then in the 1930s, the emphasis changed to a more form of artistic expression, and academies began to emerge. Now, over 5 million Brazilians practice this art.
While capoeira has grown in popularity abroad, practitioners say it has never really been able to get the recognition in Brazil they feel it deserves. Now the Brazilian government could help change the tide. It plans to make capoeira an official icon. For the first time, there's to be a government policy to preserve the art. The World Capoeira program will mean it's now officially classified as a cultural and artistic practice, and not only a sport.
We are moving in the direction to recognize and to reevaluate our own culture and recognizing it as a competitive factor of ourselves, and make sure that we are proud of this.
It follows on from plans to increase tourism in the northeast, which has long been among the poorest parts of Brazil. A capoeira reference center will be created here in Pelourinho, in the city of Salvador. Officials are investing in the state of Bahia to promote African-Brazilian culture as never before. In the late 1990s, the Bahia state government spent $1.36 billion on tourism-related projects, and an additional $677 million has been invested since 2000. This tourism push
combined with the newly launched international capoeira program, is quite a significant step for locals here in Brazil. They'll now be entitled to welfare support, not to mention recognition and status.
É muito importante, tá, que não só as pessoas da terra, da Bahia.
Capoeira lately has lost a bit of its essence and power for me. That's because people think only about money and not about its roots and what it can teach. So that's why it's important that government works this out, so that people can come back looking for the essence of capoeira, which is the fight and the dance.
It's also vital for the preservation of the language.
Reversão.
The chants and names of movements are not translated. It's an art that's practiced in over 150 countries. Now overseas masters will be entitled to diplomatic support and treated as true ambassadors of Brazilian culture.
A essência nunca perde.
For us Brazilians and Africans, capoeira will never stop. It's so important for our culture. By spreading it around the world to other countries, that's the way we can really continue its tradition.
So whether this is a government in search of a national symbol to draw in the tourist dollar, or simply a plan to empower the lower classes, both sides are sure to benefit. After all, no one can fight alone, and no one can dance alone.
Carmen Roberts reporting there from Salvador in Brazil. Well, that's it for this edition of Fast Track. But just before we go, if you want to send us an email, the address, of course, as always, is fasttracktravel@bbc.co.uk. And do join us next week for the first and two-part look back at 2004. But until then, from me, Ashley Khan, and the rest of the team here on the Caribbean island of Barbados, goodbye. Enjoy your travel.
Hello there. We've got some wintry weather around at the moment across parts of Wales, central, southern England. Most of the wintry stuff is falling over the hills, but not exclusively so. We should see the back of it through today. Most of us seeing some sunshine, and next week things will turn just a little bit milder. We're going to pick up the winds from the Atlantic. That's going to import that milder air. Come the middle of the week, we should see those temperatures just around the double-figure mark. Now, this is the situation that we have overnight. So we've got this weather system pushing through, some very wet weather across southern counties of England, and the leading edge of that weather system is bumping into some very cold air. So that's where we're going to see the snow. That snow is mostly for southern parts of Wales and Gloucestershire, and as I said, mostly over the higher ground. The heavy rain really from Dorset towards the Isle of Wight. And anywhere really from the M4 northwards, got that those very low temperatures, so icy stretches are quite likely on those roads. So one way or another this morning, it's going to be pretty nasty on the roads, either snow or ice. And through this morning, well, that's where we've got the mix of wintry weather. Still some rain, sleet, the snow, still over the higher ground chiefly. To the north of that, well, it's not going to be a bad start today. It'll be cold, certainly, but there'll also be plenty of sunshine around. And as the day wears on, the sunshine should push its way southwards, and we should see the back of that wintry weather, except for maybe one or two showers along the far south coast. We've also got a bit of a breeze blowing here, and that's really going to make it feel pretty chilly. It may well say 6 or 7 degrees in your thermometer, but it will not feel like that. And after that hard frost in Scotland, those temperatures are really struggling, maybe just 3 or 4 degrees at the best. And with a very cold day, we're going to have a very cold night, another very hard frost across the heart of the UK. So it'll be frosty to start the day on a Monday. It'll also be quite cloudy. That cloud will bring some rain. We'll also see maybe even some wintry weather across the hills in the north, and some showers will follow. Come Tuesday, most of that's out of the way. It's not a bad day for most of it. Still a bit of a chill in the air, and in the far northwest it'll be wet and windy. That's going to slip its way southwards through Tuesday night into Wednesday, and it looks like it could well be quite wet on Wednesday for much of England and Wales, although it should dry up from the west. But look at those temperatures, 9, 10 or 11 degrees, really not too bad at all. That's it from me. Here's the summary.
Pretty hard fire present for me.
A used soap on the rope
short of a facelift.
I think it was a bottom bra once. A set of differently sized nail clippers.
Have you got the receipt?
Get what you really want this Christmas. Grumpy Old Women, Tuesday at 9 on BBC2.
This week in Talking Movies, The Aviator, the life story of Howard Hughes. Leonardo DiCaprio stars, Martin Scorsese directs.
Like a little adventure, it's Hepburn.
Facing Iraqi justice, the first of Saddam's lieutenants is questioned by judges. Ali Hassan al-Majid, known as Chemical Ali, is accused of mass murder. Turkey's Prime Minister claims his country's democracy is stronger than ever, with talks on EU entry set for next year. Chile's former dictator Augusto Pinochet goes back to hospital days before a court rules on his indictment for murder and kidnapping. And warnings about a popular arthritis drug which could increase the risk of heart attacks and strokes. This is BBC News, I'm Jake Lynch. The former Iraqi army general known as Chemical Ali has appeared at a pre-trial hearing in Baghdad. Ali Hassan al-Majid is accused of gassing to death thousands of Kurds in 1988. General Sultan Hashem Ahmad, a former defense minister, was also questioned by an Iraqi judge. Our Baghdad correspondent Caroline Hawley reports.
Once one of the most feared men in Iraq, today Ali Hassan al-Majid looked frail as he was brought from jail in chains. No details have been given of the content of the investigation or of any specific charges against him. But Ali Hassan al-Majid has been accused of some of the worst abuses of Saddam Hussein's regime. It was the gassing of the town of Halabja in northern Iraq in 1988 that earned him the nickname Chemical Ali. Thousands of Kurds died in this and other atrocities committed under his command. Ali Hassan al-Majid also faces charges related to Iraq's invasion of Kuwait, where he was later briefly appointed governor. The interim Prime Minister Ayad Alawi had announced last week that the trials of former members of Saddam Hussein's regime would begin imminently. Many saw it as an attempt to score political points before next month's elections. Today, the judge who interrogated Chemical Ali said it was not for the politicians to decide.
No one can tell you when the trials will begin. We still have to collect evidence and then proceed according to proper legal principles.
Chemical Ali last appeared in court in July. Along with Saddam Hussein and 10 of his other most trusted aides, he heard he was facing charges of war crimes. The government may want speedy trials, but the special tribunal says justice will not be served by moving hastily. It's clear there's still a lot of work to do to prepare the legal cases against both Saddam Hussein and his former aides. But officials say most of the men, including Saddam, have now met their defense lawyers for the first time. The process of bringing them to trial is inching forward. Caroline Hawley, BBC News, Baghdad.
Turkey's Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan has told supporters that the country's democracy will be stronger now it's been offered a date to begin negotiations on joining the European Union. Speaking at a rally in the Turkish capital Ankara, Mr. Erdogan acknowledged that the issue of Cyprus remains as sensitive as ever.
This was supposed to be the Prime Minister's triumphant return. It was not a spontaneous rally, but one organised by his party. Several thousand people came to Ankara's main square to see and hear Mr. Erdogan. He told the crowd that from now on, Turkey's democracy would be stronger and its rights and freedoms would be implemented more meaningfully. Turkey, he said, would take its place amongst the modern countries. His foreign minister, Abdullah Gül, defended the deal over Cyprus.
We got what we asked for after hard talks.
There is some speculation. They're saying we sold Cyprus for EU membership. None of this is true. There is no recognition until the Cyprus issue reaches a lasting solution.
It's not clear yet how the Turkish people will take the Cyprus deal. The Prime Minister will be helped by the near unanimous support of the newspapers. Traditionally pro-European, nearly all of them have skated over the Cyprus issue and declared the deal a triumph. But opinion on the streets is more mixed.
The most important thing for me is what the EU will give to Turkey. We've been expecting so much from the Union. Everybody here thinks that as soon as we enter the EU, everything will be all right for the future. But I don't think it will be like this.
Turkey will just face another request from the EU, just like in the past. Even though we've got a date for talks to begin, they'll keep demanding more from us.
Mr. Erdogan can enjoy his moment of triumph, but he may face some tough times selling the Cyprus compromise to the Turkish people. Johnny Diamond, BBC News, Istanbul.
The former military ruler of Chile, Augusto Pinochet, is in hospital after a suspected stroke. The Santiago Appeals Court is due to rule on Monday whether he can be put on trial for the kidnapping and murder of 10 political opponents who were killed during his regime. General Pinochet ruled Chile from 1973 to 1990. He's been stripped of his immunity from prosecution as a life senator in 3 separate cases, but the Supreme Court ruled he couldn't be tried because of ill health. Our correspondent Clinton Porteous, who's in Santiago, says doctors are closely monitoring the general.
He's been under thorough examinations recently in the lead-up to Judge Juan Guzman making that decision earlier this week that he was mentally fit to stand trial and charging him with murder and kidnapping. It's interesting, one of his sons actually challenged Judge Juan Guzman to come down to the hospital and see how sick his father was. I think today the level of anger and passion was perhaps more surprising than anything. We're reaching a crucial stage, and I think that that's showing in some ways.
Now, General Pinochet's legacy has always been very divisive in Chile. Do you get a sense that the critical mass of public opinion now does want to see some kind of legal codicil put on the career of General Pinochet and to have these issues thrashed out in court once and for all?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the climate here is certainly against General Pinochet. He still has his supporters, and they're visiting him today. But I think that torture report, which came out last month and talked about more than 27,000 people being tortured, was a sign of systematic abuse under the government, and there's anger. Just on that, I mean, I was down at the hospital today, and a taxi driver drove up and said, "Is he dead yet?" and then drove off. He might be more extreme cases, but there is that sort of cruelty and anger against General Pinochet.
Clinton Porteous in Santiago. The United Nations is being urged to intervene immediately to prevent an escalating crisis between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. The International Crisis Group says the UN's peacekeeping mission in the region has been ineffective. It comes as the UN announced it had proof that foreign forces entered the Congo last month, the day after Rwanda threatened to send troops in. The UN says foreign forces are supporting mutinous Congolese soldiers there.
United Nations peacekeepers on the move. This is Kanyabayonga, near the border with Rwanda. They are here to stop the fighting, but they may have come late.
Where are the people? We don't know. Where did they go?
Over 25,000 people have fled the town since fighting resumed a week ago. Militiamen from the Rwandan-backed Congolese Rally for Democracy are in control of the town. The UN says foreign troops are in the region. Rwanda had threatened to send its soldiers back across the border to hunt down Hutu extremists. There were some in Interahamwe fighting with us, says this captured Congolese government soldier. Interahamwe are the Hutu militias who helped kill more than 800,000 Rwandans in the genocide of 1994. But Rwanda's critics say its proxy war here is now as much about mineral rights as it is about security. The United Nations can encourage refugees to return, but its peacekeepers cannot disarm the militias. Largely ignored by the outside world, one of the bloodiest conflicts since World War II is in danger of restarting. Raphael Jezeran, BBC News.
The latest efforts to find a truce in the troubled Sudanese province of Darfur have been thrown into doubt by a new outbreak of fighting between government troops and rebel forces. The new drive for a ceasefire in the region, where thousands of civilians have been killed and many more forced from their homes, has been led by the African Union. But on Saturday, an AU spokesman reported a new outbreak of fighting several hours after a deadline which was supposed to mark the end of a Sudanese government offensive. On Tuesday, the rebels walked out of peace talks being held in Abuja. Our correspondent Jonah Fisher has just returned to Khartoum from southern Darfur.
Well, basically the African Union imposed a 24-hour deadline on Friday, which expired Saturday evening here in Sudan, and all the indications coming out of Nigeria now are that the government are still fighting in southern Darfur, just east of Niala, at a town called Labado. That fighting is still carrying on there, and that constitutes a breach of the ultimatum which was set.
There are warnings that a drug used by millions of people with arthritis could increase the risk of heart attacks and strokes. Pfizer, the company which makes Celebrex, said the painkiller more than doubled the risk of heart attacks in one clinical trial. Graham Satchell reports.
For almost 500,000 people coping with the debilitating effects of arthritis in the UK, Celebrex has been an effective relief from pain. But now clinical trials in America have raised new safety concerns about the drug. Research into Celebrex has found that a patient taking a prescribed dose of the drug, 200 milligrams twice a day, increased their risk of heart attack and stroke by 2.5 times. At 400 milligrams twice a day, the risk increased by 3.5 times. Leading arthritis specialists are surprised by the findings, because so far Celebrex has had a clean bill of health, and they have this advice for worried patients.
If you have no previous history of heart trouble, and you've been on Celebrex or rather similar drugs for a short period of time, it seems very unlikely that you have anything to worry about. The greater concern would come if you have a history of heart disease and you've been on these drugs for more than a year.
Pfizer, the company that produces Celebrex, has seen its share price plummet, but at this stage has made no decision about the future of the drug.
We have no plans to withdraw Celebrex. What we have is a very surprising result from one of two studies, the relevance of which for the vast majority of patients benefiting from treatment with Celebrex we don't yet fully understand.
In September, a similar drug, Vioxx, was withdrawn after also showing potentially fatal side effects. And this latest research from America raises questions about whether enough tests are done before drugs enter the market. This drug, Celebrex, is now being investigated by the main European health watchdog, the EMA. And here, the Department of Health is saying if you are taking this drug, don't panic, but contact your doctor at the first available opportunity. Graham Satchell, BBC News.
Still ahead on the programme, the legacy of military dictatorship in Argentina. Mothers of those who disappeared protest, but there's also a crisis of confidence in democracy. Thousands of people have marched through Edinburgh to protest at the British government's plans to merge Scottish Army regiments. Leaders of the protest have threatened to target the seats of Labour politicians at the next general election.
It's the music that's led Scottish regiments into countless conflicts. This time campaigners are battling against their own government. All soldiers agree that change is needed, but not cuts.
The message to the government is do not cut the infantry of the line. Reverse these cuts.
Why?
Because we need every infantryman we have got.
The Defence Review has decided that 6 Scottish regiments are no longer needed. 2 of them will be merged, their names disappearing, and a new Royal Regiment of Scotland will be created with 5 battalions. The issue has become intensely political. The government insists change is necessary to make the army more resilient, robust and agile, ready for the 21st century. Opposition parties disagree.
It's often said that wise men know when to change their minds. I think if Mr. Hoon and Mr. Blair were present here this morning, they'd realise that there's a very strong sense of betrayal among people in Scotland.
Campaign organisers, bolstered by the larger-than-expected turnout, now plan to take the fight directly to the government by encouraging the public to vote tactically against Labour candidates in key constituencies at the next general election. John Morrison, BBC News, Edinburgh.
Still in Britain, 2 people have been arrested and 5 police officers injured after violence flared outside a theatre in the city of Birmingham. Around 400 Sikhs had gathered to protest against a play which they said insulted their religion. Bricks were thrown at the theatre and a door and window smashed, while as many as 50 police officers tried to contain the crowd. The performance was cancelled. Ceremonies have begun in Belgium to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the Battle of the Bulge. Hundreds of veterans led by King Albert took part in the commemoration in the southern town of Bastogne. The battle was the last major confrontation on the Western Front between the forces of Nazi Germany and the Allies during the Second World War. An estimated 80,000 Americans died or were wounded in the fighting, and possibly twice as many Germans. The headlines from BBC News. The first of Saddam's lieutenants, Chemical Ali, has faced Iraqi judges at a pre-trial hearing in Baghdad. Turkey's Prime Minister has claimed his country's democracy is stronger than ever. Now there'll be EU entry talks. Chile's former dictator Augusto Pinochet goes back to hospital days before a court rules on his indictment for murder and kidnapping. The UN Conference on Climate Change in Buenos Aires has ended, with environmental groups accusing the United States of trying to obstruct long-term action on global warming. The Worldwide Fund for Nature said the US, the world's biggest polluter, had used every possible mechanism to block progress. The Americans deny this.
While protesters outside kept themselves entertained, inside it was a grueling time for the delegates. A day over schedule, and after a marathon all-night session, a deal was finally reached. Then, after a hard night's bargaining, India and Brazil suddenly demanded guarantees that talks to be held next year on what to do when the Kyoto Agreement runs out in 2012 would not be used to commit the bigger developing countries to binding cuts in greenhouse gas emissions. Then the least developed countries protested against what they saw as an attempt to restrict their funding to adapt to climate change. That was shelved for future consideration, and the conference ended with agreement to hold more talks in Bonn, in Germany, in May. And talks are urgently needed. Under Kyoto, countries, apart from the United States, which has refused to sign up, are committed to cutting output of greenhouse gases by at least 5.2% by 2012. Most scientists say that cuts of about 60% are urgently needed. Many are warning that signs of climate change already exist, and environmental groups are particularly angry with the United States, the source of nearly a quarter of the world's greenhouse gases. This prolonged and bad-tempered conference may have reduced a deal, but the talks in May are unlikely to lead to any decisions, and the gulf between those countries which want action and those which don't may only end up growing. Fiona Wurge, BBC News.
The International High Representative in Bosnia, Paddy Ashdown, has denied accusations that he acted unconstitutionally when he dismissed 9 Bosnian Serb officials. The sackings have caused 2 senior Bosnian Serb politicians to resign in protest. Mr. Ashdown alleged the sacked officials had obstructed the hunt for war crime suspects. The sale by auction of the main production arm of the oil company Yukos is scheduled to take place in Russia later. It's despite a ruling by a United States bankruptcy court which Yukos had applied for to prevent Western banks from providing funds to the bidders. Now, UN surveys in Latin America this year warned of a deep crisis of confidence in democracy. Opinion polls showed that most Latin Americans are dissatisfied with the high levels of poverty, corruption and violence since the fall of military dictatorships in the 1980s. More than half would prefer authoritarian governments if these could offer economic development. From Buenos Aires, Tom Gibb looks at once prosperous Argentina, where the country's worst ever economic crisis and a rising crime wave have undermined faith in politics.
There are murderers at large in Latin America, goes a chant from the days of Argentina's military dictatorship. Each week since military rule ended 20 years ago, the mothers of the Plaza de Mayo have kept vigil for their sons and daughters, among the 30,000 people kidnapped and killed under military rule. But today the chant has been taken up by a new group of mothers protesting another wave of violence. Calling themselves the Mothers of Pain, these women have all had children recently kidnapped or murdered by criminals or by the police. One night, just over 2 years ago, the police detained Dolly Del Monte's third son, 19-year-old Ezekiel, and 2 younger boys as they returned home. None had a criminal record, nor were they caught committing a crime. What happened next is not uncommon in Argentina. Once relatively safe, the country is now struggling to overcome economic collapse as well as an unprecedented crime wave. Dolly has set up a plaque where witnesses say the police beat the boys and then forced them into the thick muddy water of a river, a random punishment often meted out to slum dwellers. Ezekiel's body was found 7 days later.
He knew how to swim, but the weight of his clothes didn't allow him to. Before 1983, the police and the military would detain young men, tie them up, and throw them in the river. We'd never find them. What happened to Ezekiel is the legacy of this. It's the old culture of those who've forgotten that we are now in democracy.
Dolly now works in a government ombudsman's office, the walls covered with pictures of the victims of crime or police brutality. It's still incredibly difficult, she says, for poor people to get justice.
Violence has always existed, but it's worse now. Until recently, people would not protest, so the police felt they could do what they wanted.
Rising poverty, unemployment, crime and lack of justice are all cited by UN surveys to explain why Latin Americans believe democracy has not lived up to its promise. The stink from this garbage is permanent, complains this man. It's the politicians' fault. They all steal, he says. Discontent has quickly turned to protest. 3 years ago, Argentina's democratically elected president was ousted by angry crowds, fed up with watching their once prosperous country sink into poverty. 2 other Latin American presidents have suffered the same fate since. Anger has also been directed against other institutions, like the courts and Congress. Since the arrival of democracy, Congresses across Latin America have been rocked by corruption scandal after scandal. But it's extremely rare for the politicians involved to go to jail. All too often, votes to pass or to block laws have been for sale. Mario Puntacuarto, for years the top official in the Senate, is now famous in Argentina. He needs a 24-hour bodyguard after testifying to a judge how he paid government bribes to senators. He says he personally delivered $5 million in cash, for which he was even given a receipt.
It's like Don Quixote tilting at windmills trying to stop corruption, because there's no support. If there was a law to give those who denounce corruption a new identity and police protection and to help their family go abroad, then I believe 30% of Argentina's politicians would be in jail.
Elections are, however, starting to throw up honest politicians. 5 years ago, the mayor of the populous Buenos Aires suburb of Morón was thrown out after a multi-million-dollar corruption scandal. The new mayor, to promote transparency, has put glass in the dark corners of the town hall, where residents say bribes were paid. He says open government has saved millions of dollars, but he still faces skepticism from many residents who believe all politicians are thieves.
Yo prefiero los militares. Yo no.
I preferred the military, this woman says. It was safer then. In national elections, honest politicians are also at a disadvantage. They need money to fund US-style television campaigns, which have become a multi-million-dollar business.
In the future, what you will find, if we do not stop the negative impact of money in politics, will be only rich politicians that can be caught by vested interests from the private sector to drug trafficking to whatever you imagine from illegal sources of money.
Democracy does, however, allow people to fight for change. After marches, protests and massive press coverage, Dolly was able to get justice for the murder of her son. 9 policemen have now been given jail sentences ranging from 3 years to life. Latin Americans clearly want more effective government to improve their lives. While some seek a strong man, many others are struggling to deepen democratic institutions. It's a much longer task, they say, than the optimistic predictions of 20 years ago. Tom Gibb, BBC News, Buenos Aires.
And the main news again. The former Iraqi general known as Chemical Ali has appeared at a pre-trial hearing in Baghdad. Ali Hassan al-Majid is accused of mass murder. Chile's former military ruler Augusto Pinochet is in hospital after a suspected stroke, days before a court is due to rule on whether he can be put on trial for kidnapping and murder. That's it. Bye-bye.
Hello there. We've got some wintry weather around at the moment across parts of Wales, central and southern England. A mixture of rain, sleet and snow. The snow is mostly confined to the higher ground, but don't be surprised to see a little bit of it cropping up elsewhere. We should see the back of it during the course of today, and most of us will see some sunshine, and it looks like we'll lose that wintry feel as things turn a little bit milder next week. The reason for the mild air is we're going to change the wind direction. We'll pick up a westerly breeze coming out of the Atlantic, and that's going to have a significant knock-on effect on those temperatures. We'll lose that frosty weather, and then we'll see those temperatures recovering. By the middle of the week, we should be into double figures just about everywhere. But overnight, this is the weather system that's causing us all kinds of problems. Some very heavy rain across southern counties of England, and it's the leading edge of this weather system which is bumping into some very cold air, and that's where we're generating the snow. Now, that snow is mostly over South Wales and Gloucestershire, and as I said, mostly over the higher ground, but not exclusively so. Further south, really from Dorset towards the Isle of Wight, we've got some heavy bursts of rain. Not only that, it's very cold out there. Icy stretches on the roads really anywhere from the M4 northwards. A very hard frost across Scotland. So one way or another, either snow or ice will cause some pretty nasty conditions on the roads through this morning. Now that snowy weather, the wintry weather, will be across those southern counties of England through this morning. Again, the wintry stuff mostly confined to the higher ground. To the north of that, a frosty start, but it'll be a fine start as well. Plenty of sunshine around. And it looks as if that fine sunny weather in the north will filter its way south as we go through the afternoon. And most places should end the day on a fine and sunny note. However, a bit of a breeze blowing through the English Channel could generate 1 or 2 showers. That breeze also will be a cold one. It's an easterly breeze. That's really going to be taking the edge off of those temperatures. It might say 6 or 7 degrees in your thermometer, but it will not feel like it. And after that hard frost in the Highlands, well, temperatures here could just struggle up to freezing, more like maybe 3 or 4 degrees in Aberdeen and Glasgow. Similar temperatures in Belfast, so nowhere feeling particularly warm. And after a cold day, it'll be another very cold night. A hard frost developing through the Midlands and all places north. So it'll be a frosty start to things on Monday. And we'll also see a lot of cloud around. A band of cloud will be pushing its way from west to east. It'll bring some outbreaks of rain. Also a little bit of sleet and snow over the hills in the north. That shouldn't be too significant. A few showers following that main band of rain. But I think the south and east probably staying dry. Maybe even a few spells of sunshine. None too warm still on Monday. Temperatures of 5 or 6 degrees. Come Tuesday, not a bad day for most of us. Some sunshine around, but some wetter, windier weather in the north. That'll sweep its way south on Wednesday. England and Wales could be fairly wet, but it should dry up from the west. But look at those temperatures. 9, 10 or 11 degrees. Not too bad at all. So some wintry weather to come, but it will turn sunny through the rest of today and a little bit milder next week. But if you want some real wintry weather, head towards the east coast of the United States. We've got a very strong, cold northerly breeze, and that's bringing quite a bit of snow with it. And also, those temperatures are really plummeting. Could see some massive variations in temperature in the next few days, and certainly an awful lot of snow. Here's the summary.
I feel a bit rushed. My heart is pumping quicker. I sort of want to hear everything. A bit of punk, a bit of funk. Today I don't want to order something from the menu. I want the whole menu.
Every day, thousands of people wake up with different moods. Every day, the BBC's digital radio stations provide something to suit each one of them. What do you feel like hearing?
The main news: Iraqi judges have been questioning Saddam Hussein's cousin and former general Ali Hassan al-Majid, also known as Chemical Ali. He earned his nickname after allegedly using poison gas to kill thousands of Kurds in the 1980s. He is expected to stand trial shortly, along with a number of Saddam's former aides. Police
A magical musical Christmas begins Christmas Eve with Gianni Schicchi at 1:30, followed by Carols from Kings at 5:15 on BBC2.
And that's it from BBC2 for now. However, the news continues with BBC News 24 on BBC One throughout the night. So it just remains for me to wish you a very good night and leave you with some pages from CFAX.